got
use this?
Yeah, you got your own mic. Just turn it on the bottom.
Okay.
Green means go.
On the bottom.
That green button there.
This button?
Yep.
Okay. Great. All right.
Hello. All right. Well, first of all, everyone, thank you again. This is Gregg, and we have our first guest to talk to today, and you're a pretty big deal, I hear, around here. So this is Ed Fries, who, I mean, I actually have a personal thing that you worked on that I have to geek out with for a moment, but that's coming up. But
right,
first,
I'm looking forward to that.
But you saw Microsoft Game Studios as the head of the studio grow from, the small scale to the huge scale that it was during the original Xbox.
Yeah.
Were there any challenges growing that quickly? Because you guys created a whole new console. It was first in the market, and you were trying to take market share away from the competitors. I mean, how much of a challenge was that?
Yeah, I mean, when I joined the group, it was under 100 full-time people. That was early 1996, and we were just doing PC games. Really, Flight Simulator was the only thing that was making money at that time. But we had this secret weapon under development, Age of Empires. So we brought that out the next year, and it was a huge success for us. And it just really helped fuel our growth. We started to just reach out to more developers around the world, and find more people to work with. Started to do some of our first acquisitions. We ended up acquiring FASA from around this area.
I'm a huge Shadowrun and BattleTech guy, so FASA, that was a big deal.
And I'm a big Crimson Skies fan myself. But Jordan Weissman is a friend now, and
awesome.
He's a great guy. And so we were just starting to do acquisitions, starting to grow. We eventually acquired Ensemble Studios, makers of Age of Empires. We acquired Access Software, who did our golf game, and ended up going on to do a snowboarding game and a tennis game. By the time the Xbox project rolled around, we had grown to about 400. And then Xbox just supercharged things up to 1,200 in a short amount of time.
Well, and speaking of the growth, one thing I always found fascinating was at the end of the Dreamcast life cycle, Sega was exiting the hardware market, and it seemed like right away there was a relationship built between Microsoft and Sega. How much of that did you have a hand in that, or was that something that was that set in motion years prior, or was that something that came as Sega was becoming a publisher and getting out of the hardware business?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because actually when we started to work on Xbox, there was another team inside Microsoft that wanted to make a console too. And then they were the guys from the Windows, what was called Windows CE, the consumer edition of Windows. Right. And they actually put a version of that on the Dreamcast.
On the yes.
So
excellent.
People wonder why there's this Windows logo on the Dreamcast. So I don't know about the Sega relationship before that, but that was before I got involved. So when I first joined the games group, like I said, early '96, I showed up to work, and they're like, "We're going to Japan in a week. Do you want to come?" I'm like, "Yeah, I want to come."
Yes, please.
So I tagged along on that trip, and one of the companies we met with was Sega. We met with multiple groups of Sega. Yu Suzuki was always super nice when I visited, and it was kind of a mentor to me.
That's excellent.
Many other Japanese companies we started to talk to pretty early.
And I had recently read the history of Resident Evil, and there's stories in there about.
I was telling the story here yesterday.
Oh, awesome! And I remember when I read that there was not a positive relationship between Capcom and Microsoft at that time. Did you was that something that? How did that happen, or was there some sort of breakdown that caused
I don't know. Actually, that doesn't sound. I mean, like I said, I talked about that first trip to Japan, and one of the people we met with was Capcom, and
Shinji Mikami, if I remember
exactly,
right. Okay.
Right. And they showed me this game early in development. I told this story yesterday, and I'm looking at it. I'm looking at them, and it's all like fixed camera views, and it's horror, and I'm like, this looks like Alone in the Dark. Which is a
fantastic
classic PC game, which not enough people know about anymore. Oh. And they both looked at me and they're like, "Yes, Alone in the Dark. Yes." It's like you get it. You get what we're doing.
And
I was like, great, cool.
That's so awesome. Well, and I know, and I was reading that, and I thought, because I know there was a stigma or a perceived stigma of Japanese companies not wanting to work with American hardware. Did you feel any of that in that trip to Japan? Were you getting any pushback from being an American company?
Well, first, it's very mysterious to me. It was weird. Like I had a friend who taught English in Japan, so I went out there like mid '80s, a little later, probably late '80s, and it's such an alien place, to go where you can't read anything. Not only don't you know the language, but you can't read anything. It's like
right.
But so I knew a little about Japan, but when I went back there on this trip, well, from then on, I had like a translator guy with me, a guy named James Spahn. And we would go to these meetings, and first of all, there's a million there's rules you have to follow, and no matter what, you're going to break all these rules because it's so Japanese etiquette is too complicated. But anyway, so after the meeting, I would debrief with James, and half the time he'd tell me it went bad when I thought it went good.
Oh, sure.
That's what I'm trying to say. So anyway,
trying to catch a vibe from it, but yeah, and
it's because it's translated, it's takes twice as long, and anyway, I think I got better at it. I started to understand what Japan was all about. In general, I'd say we had a warm welcome when we were there. Konami in particular really welcomed us in. We started some PC publishing for Konami because they didn't have a way to do PC publishing. We actually published a Metal Gear Solid PC version.
Right, yeah.
So, and then when we got into the Xbox time, it was there were some people like Tecmo who just wanted to be rebels, and so, working with them was fun. But most of the companies were a little careful when they worked with us because they didn't want to piss off Sony. But they also didn't want to live in a world where Sony had a monopoly. So they kind of wanted to encourage us, but without appearing outwardly like they were helping us too much.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
There's always there's a really strong sense of loyalty there, which you don't always see in the corporate level here in our environment. But there's a corporate sort of integrity there. It's different from us. I don't want to say it's weird. It's different, but kind of refreshing too. That there's a loyalty almost on a corporate level, not just personal.
Yeah, business in Japan is very different than in the U.S. and it's mostly relationship related. And once you wrap your head around that, it makes a lot of sense. In the U.S., business is a lot of contracts, and we're going to try to anticipate everything that could go wrong and everything. There it's let's go out drinking late at night and find out what kind of person you really are, and then we'll see if we want to be friends or not.
Yep.
So there was a lot of required drinking.
Darn. As being a resident of Wisconsin, I can deal with that.
It was a little brutal. They would have me out till, I don't know, there were a few nights where the sun was coming up when we walked out of the last place.
They work hard and they party hard.
And then you're going to work, and it was I would fly out for 3 days and come back because that was all I could take. It was just
So I told myself I wasn't only going to talk to you about Microsoft.
Okay.
So I brought something along.
Oh, good. I'm excited. Oh, he turned off his mic, so now I have total control of the podcast. Oh, I didn't. That's not what I thought you were going to pull out. I thought you were going to pull out a copy of Halo 2600. But this is figure prints.
This is my original figure prints.
Yeah.
I think I was on a wait list for 6 months to order it.
Oh, you were early then.
And I absolutely loved this thing. And so when I was looking, I was trying to dig deep.
I hope you're local. You didn't bring this in your suitcase.
I had it wrapped in a towel, and I had to keep telling security it was not a severed head.
Oh, you did.
But it is one of my favorite things. And I was a big World of Warcraft fan, and when I was trying to find that question, right, that Hot Ones deep dive interview question, what am I going to show you that's different? And I'm reading, and you founded the company.
I did.
That did figure prints. Where did you come up with the idea for that?
I did. First, what you got to know is, I worked at Microsoft for 18 years, retired in 2004, and was I have one young son and a second son on the way. And I had been a big EverQuest player. We put out Asheron's Call, but I liked EverQuest.
Sure.
And so, but I knew the SOE guys, the Sony Online Entertainment guys who made EverQuest, and I also knew the Blizzard guys because I had tried to buy the company a couple times.
Sure.
Microsoft eventually did buy Blizzard.
You got there, you know?
Yeah, but so I left early in 04. I quit my job, and 2004, as you may know, was so the beta versions of both those games were coming out,
right?
And then they both shipped in the fall, and so I had time. So I'm playing both beta EQ2 and beta World of Warcraft, and at one point I'm like, I wrote a long email to John Smedley. I'm like, you're in trouble, buddy. Like if it were me, I would delay EQ2 and try to respond to some of what you're seeing in WoW, because WoW is looking really good.
If I remember correctly, EverQuest 2 came out a week earlier, or something like that.
Yeah, they did the opposite of what I suggested. They brought it out early. They're like, we're gonna rush it, we're gonna get to market before them. I'm like, oh, okay.
And I bought it, and I played it, and I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And then a week later, I bought World of Warcraft, and I never played EQ2 again. And not a bad game in any rate, but that was a game that was special, you know. And so
what I'm saying is, like, I you know, that summer I played both, very much got into World of Warcraft, and you know, so I was playing a lot of World of Warcraft, and as I've got two basically babies at home, and when I'm not like changing diapers, I'm like playing World of Warcraft, and I get in with a guild called Liquid Courage, and it's mostly Microsoft test team.
Okay.
So I do a bunch of them.
Awesome.
And we had so many adventures together, but it would not be, you know, uncommon for us to be in the middle of a raid and somebody's like, I gotta go change a diaper, and you know, we just stop and wait for them.
There were a few nights, you know, we had some guild members and like, can you do one more raid? He's like, well, I gotta work. Okay, I can do one more attempt on this raid boss, but I can't shower before work then. Like, okay, let's do it, man. Thanks for, he was our main tank, you know, you had to take what you could get.
So I haven't even got to fingerprints, but really, I'll try to get to that because I know you have other questions. So yeah, I'm playing WoW, and I'm having a ton of fun, and I had an early 3D print that actually came from the game Score.
Sure.
That I think Will Wright gave me, and it was just sitting on my shelf while I'm playing World of Warcraft. And at one point, I like look at that, and I look at I look at World of Warcraft, and I'm like, you know, I wonder if I could do this for that. And then I'm like, I don't want to start a company, blah blah blah. I'm like, I'm
enjoying playing World of Warcraft all day.
Exactly. I'm like, I gotta go find the reason I can't do it, right? So then I'm like, well, I can't, you know, I'm not gonna be able to like get the characters out of World of Warcraft. And I look, and actually some fans had already started to disassemble the file system and figure out things out. I'm enough of a programmer, I could do the programming.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, that's not my excuse. I'm like, well, I bet I can't get the license. So I call Mike Morheim. I'm like, you've probably already given away the license to 3D printing characters from World of Warcraft.
Sure.
He's like, no, that's a weird thing. No, he's like, we haven't licensed that. You can have that if you want to do that.
Well, I love how it was integrated as well. Like, it was an official thing that you went to the armory, you selected what you wanted your character to look like. Do you think it would have been successful if you didn't have them, you know, being, not, of course you would have had the license, it would have been official.
Yeah.
But what would you have thought about it if you hadn't had their back end to make them customizable? Because that's really what sold me on it was, you know, I went to an armory and I selected what weapons and armor he wore.
You did, but when you posted, you did it in our system, and that's all code that I wrote, actually. So
awesome.
I'm a pretty good programmer, so I extracted, and so that was actually a lot of work for me over the next few years, because I didn't want to bug their engineers, you know, so I was reverse engineering it, and also working with some other people around the world who were reverse engineering it.
And rating, you know, and...
Yeah, and, you know, I probably asked them like one question a year when I get stuck, you know, it's like, I remember one, they had added some new armor type or something, and I'm like, God, I can't figure out like where, it's just not making sense, what I'm pulling out and what I'm trying to draw. And so finally I give in and I ask them, and they're like, oh yeah, we needed we needed a couple extra bits, so we stuck them over in this other structure somewhere else. It's like, okay, I was not going to figure that out. I'm glad I called you.
Oh, it was such a cool idea, and hopefully it was a successful venture for you.
I would say it was marginally successful,
okay.
but it was a good time. I worked with 3 other friends. Ultimately, we had a technical artist named Gregg and another programmer who did the web-based programming, Chris, and then another guy who ran the printing factory for us. So,
it's interesting now because when you walk around the tables, you see a lot of 3D printed stuff. Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah. And I'm assuming that's a little bit easier than this process was back in the day.
Well, this process, which is true color 3D printing, is still not publicly available. I mean, not like easily available. It's advanced some, but like home printing, you can't get this fidelity of color. So yeah. These are big, expensive machines, and they use this powder medium, and they print into the powder, basically a layer at a time.
That's incredible. And I've had this. I went back to my emails because I was trying to find like my order, and I couldn't find the order, but I started getting emails from the company. So I would assume that's around the time I signed up for it. Yeah. So around I think 2008, 2009. Does that sound about right? When the products were launching. Yeah. That was, and it's obviously held up. Like I've had this on display in my game room for going on almost 20 years now.
I'm glad. We learned so much about like shipping and which shipping company to use and not, and like UPS, it turns out, drops every box like 10 feet when it comes into this warehouse. And they would just snap at the ankles. We actually had to reinforce the ankles. All this stuff.
And stuff that you don't learn until you do
exactly.
it. Well, I just have one last question for you. What has kept you in the gaming sphere this long? Because that, a lot of people get into the game, they get to a high level in the gaming industry and they go off to be CEOs of other companies, form other companies outside the realm, but you've stayed in this industry. You've been in it since its massive growth, almost from the very beginning. What keeps you here?
Yeah, I mean, I started as a kid, falling in love with programming and writing games at first just because it was like an obvious thing to program. It was like, I love programming, and I was like, what can I make? And it was, early 80s, right? So the arcades were coming out, and I started copying things I saw in the arcade. But then, I also just fell in love with arcade machines and just the game business in general. So it's kind of weird. So I was there making games during the crash of 1983-84.
Sure.
I was in college working for a little company called Romox. And then game business kind of was like a dream that was taken away from me in a way. When I was halfway through college, I'm like, I got to get a real job, and I signed up for a little company in my hometown called Microsoft, and went to work there. I got interned in '85, full time in '86, and I spent 10 years doing Excel and then Word. And then finally got to get back where I wanted to be. It was the game business. So there's nowhere else I want to be. I'm here. I'm where I want to be.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Ed Freeze, thank you very much for chatting with us. We're doing what we can to raise money for the Children's Hospital today. So thank you for your time. Appreciate you so much. Thank you.